What is going on, everybody? I hope you guys are doing well. It's been a minute since I asked about your opinion and your well-being, so you guys know, and tell your parents I said what's up. It's been a minute, but basically, I have my hands on a lot of different Galaxy phones, and one line I really didn't take too much of a look at were the active versions. So today we're going to take a look at the Galaxy S6 Active. When I was going into it, I was kind of like, okay, this phone is probably going to be like the Galaxy S5 Active, which I already did a review about, and it really wasn't, breathtaking. Really the only cool thing about it was that it was like rugged and dustproof, waterproof, all that stuff. But once I started using the Galaxy S6 Active, my mind actually shifted a little bit because I was expecting something like the Galaxy S5 Active, like I said, but this one actually changed up. So the Galaxy S6 Active came out in 2015, so about 3 years, a little bit over 3 years ago. It came out in June, and looking around the body, it really doesn't look too, premium, but it doesn't look too cheap either. It's like the Galaxy S5 Active. They overlap a lot. I'm not really a humongous fan of it, I'm not gonna lie. The main reason I'm not is because it doesn't have a fingerprint sensor. The Galaxy S5 had one, the Galaxy S6 had one, the Galaxy S6 Edge had one, Edge Plus, all those, but for some reason they did not add one on this. They later on added it on the S7 Active, but it's still really weird that they did that, and I really wish they didn't. I really wish they did add a fingerprint sensor on this and, made it that much more premium and that many more features added to it, but I don't really see why they couldn't have, but really that's a really small thing that really did bug me a little bit. But overall, there is quite a bit of bezel around it, but this phone did come out 3 years ago, so keep in mind that it's not supposed to be the best looking thing. It's supposed to be something like if you're an active person, if you're going out, if you're doing this or doing that, it's supposed to be kind of like being able to suit your lifestyle, and I think it really did a pretty decent job at it. Some cool things about it, it's IP68 waterproof, so you can dip it into water about 1.5 meters. It's MIL STD 810G compliant, whatever that means. Basically what it means is like it's salt, dust, humidity, rain, vibration, solar radiation transport, and thermal shock resistant. Basically, if you're going through I was about to make a stupid joke and I'm not going to say because it's not going to roll well with you guys, but pretty much it'll be able to handle anything you throw at it. So one cool thing about this phone actually is probably the screen, and as soon as you look at it, it's a 5.1 inch AMOLED screen. It's Super AMOLED actually, and it's actually pretty decent, pretty decent. It's 1440p, it's 576 pixels per inch, and when I was using it, it seemed very good. There wasn't really too much that I can complain about. Really, the only minor thing is that if you're picking up this phone now, there's going to be burn-in on the screen most likely. I would be shocked if you don't have burn-in. On my panel at first, I didn't think there was any, but then once I booted up like a white screen, then I was able to see a little bit. But that's with any AMOLED screen, and really, I think AMOLED screens look really, really good. And I do think the screen on this phone is one really cool aspect of it. Now, probably the single worst thing about this phone is that it only got one version of Android. So it got Android 5.0.2 Lollipop, okay, then it got Android Marshmallow, and then it stopped right there. It did not get Android Nougat, it did not get Android Oreo, it did not get any other version of Android. And that right there is probably the worst thing about this phone. And going one step further, it's probably the worst thing about a lot of Android phones. They only get like 2 or 3 versions of Android. This phone literally only got one, which really makes no sense. I really don't know why they did that. The S6 got Android Nougat, I believe, and I don't understand why this phone could have handled it. The S6 got Nougat, so it made absolutely no sense. And because of that, this phone is already missing out on so many features. And for those people who do want a phone with, waterproofness and ruggedness and all that stuff, they don't want to necessarily get a Galaxy S6 because that phone will probably break because there's glass on the back. And I'm talking about it back then, but even now, if you're going to get this phone or like a Galaxy S7 or S7 Edge or 8 or whatever, if you need a phone that's more rugged and will handle, pretty much if you throw it at something, it will take it. You don't want a phone that's already outdated in features and OS versions and all that, and this phone was already like that, which really does make this phone go from let's say it was like an 8 out of 10, it makes it go to like a 6 out of 10 automatically just because of the software versions. And I'm not too sure if there's a development community behind this either, so there's not really a huge ROM community or rooting community. I'm sure it can be rooted and ROMmed, but I don't know if there's even like an Android Oreo ROM out for it or Android Nougat ROM out for it, so there might be, there might not be, but that is something to keep in mind, that this thing is already outdated. And I spent a lot of time talking about that, but that is something that really means a lot to me. Now, in terms of performance, it's actually pretty good, I will say. Even though it's kind of outdated, the apps and everything that are on it, it seems pretty good. It has an Exynos 7420 octa chipset, an octa-core CPU clocked at 2.1 gigahertz, and 3 gigabytes of RAM, and it's actually pretty good. Like I said, when I'm going through apps and multitasking and all that stuff, it doesn't seem like it lags. It seems like it's the occasional lag, things you would expect but it's really not that bad, and I'm actually pretty surprised, because usually when you go through a phone that's like 3 years old and only got one version of Android, you would expect it to be like super laggy and choppy, but this phone is actually not that bad. And I would say it's not the best and it's not perfect. There are some times where it doesn't load up the app perfectly, or sometimes it refreshes the app and you have to start in the beginning, but really it's not that bad. And in terms of overall gaming as well, I would say it's very, very good for the age that it is and the Android version it's on. So on games like Temple Run, Pew Pew, all those games, it runs fine. You're not going to run into any problems. I actually suck a lot on Pew Pew. I don't know why, but it's a very good game. Temple Run is an awesome game as well, and they run perfectly fine. Those games run basically perfectly fine on every single phone. But one cool thing is that sometimes on certain games, they do benchmark in the background and tweak some graphic settings and stuff. But usually whenever I boot up a game like this on a phone like this, usually it runs perfectly, and they benchmark it to the highest available settings and go from there. But one shocking thing that I had was when I went into Real Racing 3, which is the most intensive game that I know of. I know there's more like Nova and stuff, but this is the one where I think is like pretty decent. It's not too hard to install, and I don't need to go through like an hour of tutorial to learn how to play it. I would say Real Racing 3 runs very good on this thing when you consider the age and the OS version. It's actually very, very good. There were some glitched frames, there were some skip frames here and there, but I would say it's actually not that bad, and I think it's better than like an LG G3 or even an LG G4. I think this phone runs it very, very well, and I'm actually pretty surprised because I wasn't expecting it to run it this well, and I was kind of wanting it to not run it well so I can like bash on this phone even more, and tell Samsung and rub it in their face that they should have updated this phone. But really, like, it's not that bad in performance, which I'm pretty shocked about. So in overall performance in gaming, I would say it's on the better end. It's not the greatest, it's not perfect. It probably wasn't even the greatest of 2015, but it's very good for what it is. Now switching to the camera, it does have a 16 megapixel camera on the back. It can shoot 4K videos, 1080p videos at 60 frames per second, and 720p videos at 120 frames per second. And it's actually not a bad camera at all, if I'm not even gonna lie. It's pretty good. I would say it's almost like the Galaxy S6 camera, and the S6 Edge camera too. And like I said, those cameras were very good as well. And when I'm playing with a phone like this, I always take photos, I always go through the settings and take videos as well. And really, this camera is really, really good. And again, it kind of depends on the lighting, but I've also had phones that were like in the best of lighting and still couldn't take pictures. They always looked washed out and stuff, but this phone is pretty decent. One thing I don't really like though about these Samsung cameras, and it's more so about the app, is that whenever you make a video, you always have to click the autofocus button in the lower left corner when you're starting off, and that always gets me because I don't expect that. Usually autofocus is turned on by default, but when you're doing something like this, and like when you're in the middle of making a video, and you'll see when I boot up or when I show you the video test, I have to manually click on the autofocus thing, so I can't even test the autofocus until that's on, which is super annoying. But really, that's my only little problem with this. And keep in mind that when I'm talking about like cameras and stuff like that, I always keep in mind the age of this phone. So 3 years, I mean, that's not old by any means, but it's not new either, and cameras have really developed since then, so I always keep in mind the age when I'm like doing something like that or thinking about it. But there is a 5 megapixel front facing camera, which is pretty decent. I don't really use front cameras that often, but it's, if you need it, it's there. It's 1080p, so you can film videos on it as well, so that's kind of cool. This is a quick test of the video quality of the Galaxy S6 Active, and you can also see like the mic quality too. And honestly, it's actually not that bad. So as you can see, we have like a still thing, and if I just zoom in a little bit, you can see like it's not bad at autofocusing, but it does take like a second. Oh, that was my camera, but you see like it's still not focused into the DS. When I bring it back, it's fine. When I bring it back out, it's not. And maybe, oh, see, the Samsung, I don't know why they have autofocus like disabled every time you put in the camera. That's one really annoying thing about it. But other than that, when you zoom in, it might take a second for it to, okay, there we go, it's good, and zoom out. But overall quality is not that bad. As you can see, I have pretty good lighting, I have a window and everything, so it's actually not that bad. And if you're just like taking photos of still images or taking videos of something like this, I mean, you can see the quality is actually pretty decent. Now this phone is actually pretty good in terms of battery life as well. It has a 3500 mAh battery, but also keep in mind that because it's so old, the battery has deteriorated quite a bit probably. So it's more so probably like a 3000 mAh battery if I'm being honest. And the thing that sucks the most is the battery is not removable, and there's no micro SD card slot either. They took those out when they made the Galaxy S6 and S6 Active and all those phones, but that's probably the dumbest thing Samsung ever did. I understand the battery, but the micro SD card they should have never taken out, because that was the one thing that really differentiated like getting a Samsung over getting an iPhone. And since then, I mean, they've added it back in, but really, I I think the battery life is okay. It's definitely on the better end. This phone was again marketed as like a phone you could bring hiking with you, and if you forget your charger or something, you can use it for a couple more days. And it's not horrible and it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And I would say if it was between this or like a iPhone 6s, which came out the same year, I would definitely say this phone had better battery life. Now, some other notable things to note, like I said, this phone does not have a removable battery or a micro SD card slot, so you are giving those things up. This phone also does not have a fingerprint sensor. This phone also has all that waterproofness, ruggedness, whatever. The buttons on the front are actually not capacitive. They're full-on buttons, and they feel pretty decent. I really like the back of this phone as well. It's like the camouflage and like kind of like different texture. I like that a lot. A lot of you guys might not like that, so just kind of keep that in mind. But I think the body is something that I really do like. And this phone also does have like a S voice Bixby button on the Bixby, whatever, button on the left side of the phone. I don't really use it. I don't know. I don't know what else you do with it. It's like a Siri kind of thing. I would really only use it just for like turning on the phone. But even then, you have the buttons on the front. You have a power button. That button is really useless. And from what I know, you can't really map it to something else, which is so dumb, but whatever. So all in all, is the Galaxy S6 Active worth it in 2018? I would say yes, this phone is worth it. I mean, if you have the money and you need something that's like pretty rugged and whatever, you're planning on throwing it against the wall 500 times, this phone is pretty decent. I'm not going to lie. There's really not too much to complain besides the software updates. But if you want something that is going to, you want more battery or you want more storage or whatever, this phone only comes in 64 gigabyte. That's the max. So you can't even add a micro SD card or change the battery out, which really does kind of hinder me from making this phone like 100% perfect. But really, it's not that bad. But what I will say is if you have the money, I mean, this phone isn't cheap by any means. This phone is still over like $100. And with that money, I would probably say like if you need a specific phone like this phone right now, like rugged or whatever, then get it. But if you want a better phone for almost the same price, I would say get the Google Pixel, the first one. That phone is very, very good. You're getting way more software updates. You're giving up a little bit of the ruggedness, but you can always throw a case on it and be good. And you also don't have a micro SD card slot or removable battery on that either, but still you're getting much more better performance, more updates, and just basically a bigger development community behind it. If you ever want to ROM it or root it, you always have that option. And that's really something I would kind of tell you guys to do. I would stay away from like a Galaxy S6 over this. I would say get a Google Pixel 100%. But really the choice is yours, guys. I'm not your mom. I'm not going to make your decision for you, but if you want to pick up an S6 Active or Google Pixel, links are in the description. Make sure you guys get it through there so you can help out the channel. Every single thing you buy through that link helps generate revenue for this channel, and it makes us go and buy new things and like old technology like this. So definitely get things through that link. I would really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber we get really does count, and watching this channel grow is so awesome, and I love it when you guys subscribe. So definitely go hit that subscribe button. It means so much. Check out the links in the description as well. All those links mean something to me. My Twitter and Instagram are down there. Feel free to DM me if you want. I can't promise I'll DM you back, but I will try to look and probably DM you. I don't know. It just depends. I get a lot of DMs, so if you guys ever need to talk, I'm here for you. But make sure you follow me too. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.